if you're joining us here, this is our 4 versus 8 matchup. It's the semifinal between Austin Grady and Austin Bursavich. Now, Bursavich, a experienced Moto player here. He's our 8 seed on the right. One of the more veteran players of the field. For Austin Grady, really an up-and-comer, younger player in the field. Did qualify, played a Pro Tour, the most recent one. Pro Tour Ether Revolt, made day 2 as well. Qualified that by winning an RPTQ with Merfolk. So now has some Pro Tour experience behind his belt, has some wins with this deck, finds himself in the semifinals here.
And he demonstrated some prowess in the deck earlier when we had him on camera, really navigating with Miro Rijri very effectively.
Yeah, so being the higher seed, he'll be on the play. Starts with a turn 1 Curse Catcher. And hand looks pretty functional. Lands number 2 and 3, Spreading Seas, a couple Merfolk. That'll play.
And one of the games for Merfolk, one of the ways that Merfolk can really run away with games in this matchup is taking advantage of the fact that the Death Shadow deck is quite land light, Spreading Seas them off of their colors.
Bursavich, a slower start here. He'll cycle Street Wraith, go to 18, and then cast Traverse the Ulfenvault. Austin is going to counter it with the Curse Catcher.
And we'll see how this unfolds in the coming turns. It's curious whether or not Bursavich was baiting Grady into that line.
Grady's turn 2 play will be Silvergo Adept showing Lord of Atlantis. That part's strong. Yeah, I mean, the Curse Catcher was on the board, so Austin, if he needed that Traverse, if it was that Traverse or bust, he may not have gone for it. It looks like he'll get the second land anyway with another Traverse.
The casting of this second Traverse suggests that that was, in fact, not a bluff.
Yeah, has to get a basic Swamp here. Only 2 basics in the deck. And if that is a Spreading Seas in Austin's hand, or in Grady's hand, rather, that could deal a lot of damage if it's not Thought Seized.
Oh, yes.
So Swamp into hand for Bursavich. Probably a discard spell to follow up on this. Yeah, Thought Seas, Bursavich down to 16. Spreading Seas, Lord of Atlantis, Master of Waves, Harbinger of the Tides, Island. This is a pretty good grip for Grady.
Yep.
And the worst part is if I'm on Bursavich's side, I really want to take creatures, right? I want to kill his creatures and take them. I don't want to let him get 3 Merfolk into play. At the same time, Bursavich might have to take Spreading Seas because if this is his only black source, he can't play Magic on blue and green.
Right. You need to be answering the creatures out of the Merfolk deck so they don't snowball out of control, but if you can't cast your spells, you can't do that.
We'll see which line he takes. Another Traverse mate appears to be in his hand, but right now Bursavich does not have Delirium, and yeah, he has to take Spreading Seas to protect his mana. And that feels like a win for Grady.
Yeah, this is an opening.
And then he draws the Spreading Seas anyway, going for that Swamp. That's a huge one. Hits for 2 with Silvergill Adept. Bursavich is going to have to draw a land. Can he do it here?
Looks like Abrupt Decay.
No, he just passes. Grady going to try to bring this one in. No 4th land yet, but he'll play Master of the Pearl Trident. Silvergill Adept pumps up to a 3/2. A swing will put Bursavich down to 11. Grady drew Dismember as well, so if there's a Tarmogoyf on Bursavich's side, that may not work either. And you see Grady picking up the pace. He knows that he's closing in for the kill. Casts Lord of Atlantis, swings for 7. Bursavich down to 4. Curse Catcher joining the team. This is just too many creatures. Bursavich draws a card for turn at 4, says go. Grady swings for lethal, and that is going to be the first game. Merfolk takes it down. Austin Grady up 1-0.
I really like this Austin Grady, and I'll tell you why. He played that very fast.
Yeah, he just, as soon as Bursavich started missing, he just knew he had it.
Didn't agonize over some...
What if you have... Like,
yeah,
no, I got you.
I have Lords, I'm playing Merfolk, jam, you're dead, game 2.
All right. And some power there by the Merfolk deck. Curse catching the first Traverse, then casting Spreading Seas, we'll say that, off the black source. Bursavich not able to play, and we're on to a second game. Okay, looking at the sideboards here, we saw Bursavich win this one earlier. So last time he had boarded in these 3 Fulminator Mages, and then Fatal Push, Maelstrom Pulse, Liliana of the Veil. He was going on a kill creatures and then use Fulminator Mage to kill Mutavault strategy.
Yep. We didn't see it, but there's an argument for bringing in Collective Brutality in the matchup as well. You usually can cleanly deal with a Lord, and it's an answer to Master of Waves on top of that. On Grady's side, we have 4 Hurkyl's Recall, 4 Tidebinder Mage, 3 Relic of Progenitus, 2 Unified Will, and 2 Dispel. Relic of Progenitus is quite good. It manages Delirium, can keep you off traversing for a creature. Tidebinder Mage can tap down Tarmogoyf. That's pretty strong as well. Dispel to fight over removal spells is reasonable. I think that the other 2 cards are the more larger highlights, though.
Yeah, those 4 Tidebinder Mages look to be really good. Relics are good as well, and maybe Unified Wills. But that's when you board in 7 cards out of Grady's deck, what kind of stuff leaves to make room for that?
Dismember is pretty unlikely to actually kill anything in this matchup. It's not at its best. I kind of like his Spell Pierce that he has in the main deck because Bursavich does have a reasonable threshold of 3 mana non-creature spells.
Yeah, he has these Lilianas, and you could even get a removal spell with it. It's unlikely that Austin can pay.
There's some argument for going lower on Master of Waves for a couple reasons. It costs 4. The entire thing is cleaned up by Liliana the Last Hope.
Or Fatal Push. Ooh.
Right.
I could see that. I do like the 2 copies of Kira Great Glass Spinner for Grady as well. Those seem to be very good in this matchup if he can get that card out.
Absolutely.
All right, players can get ready for the second game. We're StarCityGames.com. We have our Star City Game Night. This is the exclusive pins and tokens given away at events all around the country just for playing in them. So you can actually earn these just by showing up to your local store. During March, we are giving away the Pig Through Time pin and token. These, of course, are all parodies on popular Magic cards. Of course, we just turn them into animals because everybody thinks Magic's more fun that way. In April, we'll be doing the Fleece Keeper. This is the creature, or rather the sheep that doesn't let creatures attack. It keeps the fleece, so to speak.
Everybody knows that sheep are pacifists.
And in May, we now have the new one. This is going to be the Imperious Perfect. This one is it's a cat, so it's going to be one of my favorite ones that we've done in a while.
Every time we put this slide up, I get a little more angry.
Just, is it the pun or the cat?
All of it.
All of it? Okay. So right now, you can find a store near you, or if you are a store owner, you can register for this at StarCityGames.com/game-night. Getting ready for game 2. Austin Bursavich going to be back on the play.
We just fell so far from Pig Through Time. That one is so good. It's impossible to top. Fleece Keeper's pretty good too.
Yeah. It's a goat. It's a sheep token, right? It's an 0-1 sheep or an 0-1 goat. That's going to matter to me because I don't think anything makes 0-1 sheep in Magic. But Fleece Keeper, I don't know. You don't really shear your goats. The technicalities here, I think, matter.
I have never sheared an animal of any sort. This is outside of my range of expertise.
Yeah, I'm trying to think. So there's not going to be like a Magic card that polymorphs your guy into a sheep, right? That's that's so iconic. That's what wizards do. They turn you into a sheep.
Like does Avenize? Does that make a goat or a sheep? I think it's sheep.
I think it's sheep. Avenomancer. That's like what you have to pounce 3 lands to do it or something horrible.
Because Unglued had a sheep token, if I'm not mistaken.
It does. So there is, yeah. I don't know if it's an 0-1.
Well, the Unglued tokens as printed did not denote power and toughness.
So they can be whatever you want them to be.
As long as it's a sheep. If what you want is a sheep of a variable power and toughness, it's exactly what you want.
You can have any animal you want as long as you want a sheep. Austin back on the play. So it looks like Grady takes a mulligan but scries to the bottom. Bursavich on 7, however. Underway, game number 2.
Hopefully Bursavich has something a little more powerful than Traverse for basic land in this game.
Yeah, I mean, that was really it, right? That Bursavich's turn 1 play was Traverse and turn 2 play was Traverse. That's below the line for him.
Well, see, the first Traverse was a kill spell for Curse Catcher.
Looks like Grady's keep's pretty reasonable. 2 lands, one of them's Mutavault, and has Silverglow Adept and Merfolk in it. Feels like Silverglow Adept, one of the more important cards in this matchup, but his hand's going to be torn up. We'll get a look at it with Inquisition of Kozilek. Island Mutavault, and then 4 different True Drops. Silvergill Adept, Harbinger of the Tides, Tidebinder Mage, and Master of the Lord of Atlantis. Now,
Bursavich splits this into 3 piles, lands that he cannot take, cards he needs to write down, and the Silvergill Adept, which will be leaving Grady's hand.
Yeah, I mean, especially off Mutavault Island, none of Austin Grady's cards are castable right now. Silvergill Adept seems like the easy choice.
I think it's without argument the most powerful card in the Merfolk deck.
Yeah, yeah. You can. I mean, you can play it off. Get it and play off Ether Vial as well.
Okay,
it's
so
good.
you can make the case for Vial as well.
No, I mean, no, I'm with you. I like the Silver Girl Adept. Grady draws second Mutavault, plays Island. Not going to be able to cast anything just yet. So Bursavich punched a good hole in Grady's hand. Now will he be able to do more? Another Thoughtseize shows the hand. This is medium at this point. As soon as I don't see that much of a difference between all of Austin's 2-drops.
Tiebinder Mage is likely the potential to matter the most, but as long as Austin has a removal spell for that, he just gets to untap any Tarmogoyf he produces anyway.
Yeah, takes Lord of Atlantis. See if he has another land drop, though. Looks like the answer is yes. Stomping Ground, he'll shock. See if he's going to cast anything or if he's just shocking. Looks like just taking 2.
Yeah, he's trying to reason how much, if any, damage Grady can deal to him, because he wants to be able to get a Death Shadow online.
And this is interesting. Grady drew the second island, but just makes Mutavault for the turn anyway. I suppose his other 2-drops aren't exciting. Harbinger of the Tides and Tidebinder Mage.
And also, if Bursavich just had a Tarfire there, you let him use his mana more efficiently.
Another discard spell for Bursavich. It's Inquisition of Kozilek. At this point, I don't think that these discard spells are particularly damaging. If Austin's trading his whole hand, if these two players are trading both their hands, the fact that Grady has 2 Mutavaults is going to have to come up.
Yeah, Bursavich is probably drawing a couple too many discard spells. He'd like to get a threat online as soon as possible.
Plays Basic Forest, says go. He's actually a ways away from Traverse as well.
Yeah, just a pile of sorceries there in the Wooded Foothills.
Austin Grady, second Mutavault, swings his first Mutavault, and that's actually going to connect Bursavich down to 11. Hand for Grady is Island, Tidebinder Mage.
And the potential upside of being able to swing the tempo with the Harbinger of the Tides, to have a Tarmogoyf with a Tidebinder Mage, that's another reason to go for this Mutavault plan over casting either of those cards.
Now, does Grady have to be careful about these chip shots on Mutavaults? Because you see Bursavich now has Death Shadow. He has gotten Death Shadow in range. You know, it's now castable.
That Wooded Foothills would have made that so anyway.
A lot of islands for Grady. Hand 3 islands on a Tidebinder. Looking at ways to kill Death Shadow. For Austin Grady,
it is currently in Dismember range.
Grady's gonna activate Mutavault and swing. Now, this is interesting. This is a bluff, and it's gonna work. I like this play from Grady, right? So if Austin Bursavich actually blocked and just sacrificed the Wooded Foothills, this Mutavault would be dead. So what stopped Austin from making the call here?
Makes his Death Shadow larger by not blocking.
So it actually just wants to take damage.
It seems like both players want the same thing here. Grady is possibly trying to make Bursavich consider not damaging himself too much. If he chips in with the Mutavault, he might incentivize Bursavich to try to conserve some life points, which will slow Bursavich's clock against Grady.
So fetch shock from Bursavich goes to 8. Could be going to 6. So damage has not happened yet. It looks like actually he did make the block. So he may have spoken a little soon there. So made the block, fetch shock. Mutavault did go to the graveyard.
Shadow out of 5/5. It's a 4-turn clock.
And I get it, if Grady's in a spot of a weaker position, that kind of bluff had the potential to get some damage in. I guess it seems unlikely that Bursavich wouldn't have called.
Grady just does not have the tools that he needs to win this game by just playing it heads up. So I do like that he's trying to eke some advantage by making, interesting plays.
Death Shadow going to go to work. It's a 5-5. Grady will take, going to 15. Follow-up here from Bursavich is going to be a Liliana. It's Liliana of the Veil. Well, that's not really a problem for Grady. There's plenty of islands to discard. Bursavich discards a fetch land. And now I think if you're in Grady's spot, you kind of wish you had that second Mutavault. You could kill Liliana. He drew Spreading Seas for the turn, so he can cut Bursavich off of red mana with it and use Mutavault.
The Spreading Seas is not nothing, though. All the threats in Bursavich's deck cost only green and black mana, and Bursavich already has a significant board position.
Yeah, he's going to need, Grady will need more. And he's actually going to use Spreading Seas, yeah, on the Stomping Ground. He's using the Mutavault, though. Looks like he wants to cast Tidebinder Mage. Draws. Looks like it's a Master of the Pearl Trident. But if he plays a 2-2 into this board, it's not going to do much. Or maybe a Curse Catcher. So Grady did go through combat here to clear the mana pool. Then casts Curse Catcher. Maelstrom Pulse. Looks like Teamer Battle Rage in Austin's hand.
So the Battle Rage is offline now, but conveniently, Liliana allows him to discard that one.
Possibly Tarfire. Either way, it's red, so yeah, you can just discard it.
Yeah.
The Maelstrom Pulse is pretty strong.
Strong enough to kill a Curse Catcher.
Yeah, well, he just doesn't need too much else. I mean, Liliana seems to be able to take care of each successive creature from Merfolk, while Death Shadow deals the full 20. I think I'm starting to see what you mean about Death Shadow just being a good card in a fair deck.
Well, look at the creatures that the players spent 1 mana to cast.
Right.
One of them is Curse Catcher. That could sacrifice itself to make Bursavich tap his Spreading Seas land to resolve Master Pulse targeting Curse Catcher.
I like this. Bursavich.
Oh, so the Pulse was targeting Spreading
Seas. Grady sacrificed Curse Catcher anyway. And then Bursavich swings in with Shadow. Yeah, I mean, this actually, it's interesting because now that Bursavich paid, he can't plus the Liliana because he would lose his Tarfire. It looks like he's going to do it anyway.
Yeah, that's fine.
And Grady gets rid of another island. Or perhaps the Tidebinder Mage. Yeah, he's actually empty-handed as well. Unified Will not really going to play here anymore.
Nope.
Grady running out of resources. Here's Mutavault. We'll see where he sends it. It's going to be putting the Planeswalker down to 3. He'll pass. In Austin Grady's side, if Bursavich pluses the Liliana, which is going to happen, I think I would concede before discarding here. I don't want my opponent to know that Unified Will's in the deck anymore, post-board.
Sure.
They do have deck lists, but he doesn't know how you've sideboarded. Maybe he's just forgotten.
He's dead enough where concealing that information makes sense.
Yeah, there's not a reasonable set of draws Grady has. And actually, Bursavich just says go, so that doesn't have to happen. But at 8, that's going to be the game, and it looks like we'll be headed to a third.
So Grady drew one of his many 2-mana 2/2s, so he gets to chip into the Liliana, cast that, and see what happens, though. With Bursavich not discarding the Liliana, he's got something good hanging out.
Match between Aaron Rubin and Trent Avra looks like also going to 3 now. That is Burn versus Death Shadow in our other semifinal. All right, Master of the Pearl Trident is going to attack, take care of Liliana. That forces Bursavich to have a kill spell, which he does, Abrupt Decay, and that will take care of the game. So, game 3 in both semifinals now, as Death Shadow evens it up.
Merfolk will be on the play this game, which gives him more opportunity to have those runaway Spreading Seas games.
You're right, and so that's just really the powerful part of the card Death Shadow. Austin Bursavich had a triple discard spell hand, and those are, like I said, I think when he did it, I said that's too much discard. The problem being A lot of times in these Jund decks, if all you do is play 1 mana discard, you don't always control the board. You know, you'll see that in 8-rack sometimes, right? They make everybody discards both their hands, but if the other player got a Tarmogoyf down or something like that, you know, the discard player doesn't always win. Death's Shadow is pretty unfair in that situation.
Right. The deck just has a higher density of heavy hitters.
It's like Death Shadow or Tarmogoyf's 5 through 8.
Right. Well, if you look at traditional Jund, sometimes they have those 3 or 4 discard spell hands, and their follow-up is Dark Confidant. There's just more top decks in the format that clean up Dark Confidant than there are Death Shadow and Tarmogoyf. You know, Fatal Push kills any of these things, but Lightning Bolt only kills 1.
Right. So, and that just gives him permission to keep triple discard spell hands and wins. When you have 4 Goyfs, 4 Traverses, 4 Death Shadows, yeah, it's okay if both players discard their hand. You're going to top deck better from that spot.
Yeah, you just have a very high density of very efficient creatures that outsize the entire format.
Yeah, and that's what I even really liked Austin Grady's hand. You know, he had 2 lands and a whole slew of 2-drops, including cards like Silvergill Adept. At a certain point, when a deck can main deck so much 1 mana discard, the text boxes stop mattering. You know, if you're going to get triple Thoughtseize, that doesn't matter what you're playing. You're playing a bunch of things in the graveyard.
It's harder to keep a defensive reactive hand against this deck, and it's harder to mulligan too. Just the idea that you can have a hand that needs a couple things to shape up, or even to mulligan and have 1 or 2 reasonable spells. This deck just has everything it needs to beat whatever that combination of spells is. It has all the tools it needs to line up and be reasonable really in any matchup.
So StarCGames.com, we have our Versus series. That's where some of the top players over in Roanoke showcase the newest decks and the top decks of the format in playtesting sessions. If you are familiar with the series, you may have seen the 24 by 28 inch, it's the full-size playmat that they use. That's now actually available as featured in those videos over at StarCityGames.com. Table-size playmats, pretty great as well. StarCityGames.com/VS playmats, they're now available for order.
There used to be a 2-player playmat. The middle of it was red. That's why we call the
red zone
combat. Yeah, attacking creatures enter the red zone.
That goes back to football too, you know.
Sure,
they have a red zone as well.
I believe you.
Yeah.
It's interesting to me that the red zone is black on this mat, and the red is where the creatures normally live.
My creatures live in the red zone.
We're always ready for game day.
Those are my favorite decks. If I'm going to play creatures, they're living in the red zone.
Comes into play tapped and attacking. Goblin Guide Gui.
How much, you know, if I were making Goblin Guide, I would put the text on it, must attack each turn if able. Don't tell me you wouldn't still play it in your burn decks. They would still play that card.
Oh, certainly.
But, you know, just to prove a point. Let's just... I'm making it worse for flavor reasons, because I would enjoy the card more if it had to attack. And then every time it killed itself, I'd just be like, you did your work, Goblin Guide. It's okay. I still like you. A mulligan here for Austin Grady.
Well, looks like Bursavich has decided to keep.
Second, Grady having to mull to 6 in game number 2 as well.
Had a little bit of issue with his mana in this match. Had a hand with a lot of double blue spells, and his second land was a Mutavault. Has yet to produce an Ether Vial here.
Though when your opponent's trying to triple discard spell you, is Ether Vial even good anymore? It's a card they don't have to take.
No, it doesn't seem particularly effective in this matchup.
Keep on 6 for Grady. And a scry at the top. Land, and we are underway. Looks like Dispel has come in for the Merfolk player. He has some in his opener. A lot of 2-drops to go next to it. Just Verdant Catacombs for Bursavich. So no turn 1 play, and we'll get Master of the Pearl Trident. It's the first creature on the table for Grady. We'll see just how many of these are going to be killed. Looks like Fatal Push on the way. Another Fatal Push in Bursavich's hand.
When the Death Shadow player cracks a fetch at your end step, it almost always means they're casting a spell. Just the nature of the deck, their duels enter the battlefield untapped.
So a lot of 2-drops and Dispel in Grady's hand. No third land yet, though if he finds one, he'll be able to protect that 2-drop from kind of this attrition plan that Bursavich is on. Inquisition of Kozilek, so we'll get a look. Dispel, Tidebinder Mage, Harbinger of the Tides, Lord of Atlantis.
It's a lot easier to beat Dispel when you know about it.
You know, and this is one of the things that Merfolk is struggling with. Bursavich's deck seems to be between, pushes, Tarfires, Inquisitions, and Thoughtseize. It's just too good at this trading. Austin Bursavich is going to trade cards 2 or 3 times in the early game. And when they're done, Grady will just have, Tidebinder Mage. It's a 2-2.
There are matchups where it feels a lot worse to have Tarfire in your deck than Lightning Bolt. Yeah, plenty of matchups where you don't want either, but this is a matchup where both of them do the same job. It's kind of like having more Fatal Push.
Yeah, so you have 16 cards that trade on 1 mana. You see Bursavich taking Dispel. That's a huge show of strength.
Yeah, it must be full up on removal spells.
Well, right, if you leave Austin with all these 2-drops, Austin can only play 1 card per turn. And if you have some removal spells, the only thing you're losing to is if Grady starts, maybe plays a Merfolk, protects it with Dispel, top decks another Dispel.
Particularly if Bursavich has a Kolaghan's Command.
Yeah, and look, I mean, once again, it's 3 trades, right? Turn 1, Fatal Push, turn 2, Inquisition, Inquisition. So this is very similar to the triple discard spell we saw last game. Bursavich is +2 cards. Grady mulliganed, and Bursavich is on the draw. He's left Grady with a pair of 2/2s for 2. But there is one thing, and that's this draw that Grady had just picked up that could change the shape of the game.
Kira, great glass spinner. He does need a 3rd land, but when that one's on the battlefield, takes 2 kill spells to solve any of your creatures.
He needs that land, and he has to have it before, Austin makes him discard it.
Right. Also on the battlefield, it can be vulnerable to Liliana of the Veil.
So Bursavich down to 11 on a fetch land. Looks like a Liliana of some flavor. We'll see which one. Neither are good news for Grady. Veil seems like the one he really can't beat.
On the current board state, yeah, Veil is certainly more powerful.
Looks like Kolaghan's Command, 2 damage and discard a card. So he's just going to hang on to Kira and just hope to draw that land. That seems like he's going to discard Kira. I don't know. I mean, now, yeah, he draws the land here.
Ugh.
Yeah.
He kind of had 2 bad options.
Yeah, I mean, I think I like keeping Kira there just because that card is the best card here. I mean, yes, maybe Bursavich has Liliana of the Veil, and none of this matters. But I really, on this board, I like Kira so much more than anything else.
Right. I'm inclined to agree.
All right, we now have our first finalist, Trent Avra, playing Burn. He is your winner in 3. He is now into the finals. And we see both players trading land drops. 2 copies of Harbinger of the Tides for Austin Grady. He's going to make one on the end step of Bursavich's turn. And he'll go ahead and attack with it. Bursavich down to 9. Curse Catcher and another Harbinger in play for Grady, or in hand rather for Grady. Kind of interesting to see if he wants to put that Curse Catcher out there.
It's not going to counter any spells, but it turns up his clock. But it does not allow him to flash in the other Harbinger. Yeah, it's interesting here. Check on Harbinger of the Tides whether you can target your own creatures
guy.
with it.
That's exactly what I was
It's been a change
wondering.
in templating where I don't know if this one allows you to do that.
Thoughtseize from Bursavich. Grady will flash into play a Harbinger of the Tides. I'm actually a little interested here. You see Curse Catcher, the last card. Whether or not, Austin Grady's doing this end step game here. It's possible that he could have just been playing all these, just 2 mana, 2 mana, 1 mana. And it looks like, no, you can only target your opponent's things with this card. Tarmogoyf for Bursavich, and he also has a Maelstrom Pulse in hand. Things are looking good for him again. But I want to go back to that turn with the Kira. If Grady had a Kira in play, I wonder how different this game would be. That Maelstrom Pulse wouldn't do anything.
Yeah. You know, you couldn't anticipate that the island was on top of his deck, but I think in terms of risk
You just have to
assessment,
play
the
for
Kira,
it.
yeah, I think it just had a higher ceiling there.
So Tidebinder made off the top for Grady. That will tap down Tarmogoyf. Here's a swing with 2 Harbingers to put Bursavich down to 3. This is actually a scary situation for Bursavich.
Yeah, he needs to... Well, the Maelstrom Pulse can deal with the 2 creatures of the same name. He
then
does
he's
have
dead.
the 2/2.
Yeah.
This fetch land better be finding a castable 1-mana spell.
Yeah, goes down to 2. Okay, so if he has a Fatal Push in hand, he has the board taken care of. And he does, so it's push for the Tidebinder Mage. Tarmogoyf untaps. He's got Pulse for the 2 Harbingers. So far, so good. Takes care of those. So we have instant sorcery, creature in yards, land. May not have anything more, just the 4/5. Swings for 4. So he goes to work. Grady down to 16 with Bursavich at a very low 2.
Some matchups where 4/5 is a Tarmogoyf ceiling, but it's kind of small for the Death Shadow deck.
Grady draws a card. Looks like a colorless card. I think you'd hope it's not Aether Vial.
That'd be an unfortunate top deck.
Not what he wants. Goes down to 12. Draws Mutavault. He'll play that one. That's a lethal attacker. You see Bursavich, one of his cards in hand, Thoughtseize. Certainly not castable anymore.
No. And that is one of the risks you run playing 8 targeted discard spells.
Yeah, you are going to draw some in the late game, and that's... I mean, Inquisition would actually be fine here. I believe where we're at is that there is a Aether Vial in Austin Grady's hand. Now, he's intelligently not casting it because he doesn't want to see it get Abrupt Decayed and then Tarmogoyf grow.
Also having...
Liliana the Veil Insurance.
Well, getting hit by... Yeah, Liliana the Veil had another good spell. Kolaghan's Command in the draw step is kind of the one that's going to be more impactful.
Liliana Last Hope. Cast for Austin. He's going to try to find a second creature. He's -2ing. Mishra's Bauble and Stomping Ground in the yard.
That's an artifact.
It grows the Tarmogoyf. It does not... I think he really wanted to find a Death Shadow here. And now, you know, Tidebinder Mage off the top might win the game.
So that Spell Pierce that Grady just picked up is interesting because Bursavich controls his basic swamp and he has an uncracked Bloodstained Mire. On the previous turn, he did not go and find a tapped duel. He has a number of 3-mana spells in his deck. This could actually counter his spell.
Yeah, it looks like that card was not Aether Vial, it was Ghost Quarter. So Grady's going to put Ghost Quarter in play, says go. Now he's thinking the same thing. Can he do any damage with this Ghost Quarter? You know, so Bursavich's deck has 6 mana producing lands. It has all the ones we see in play, that Stomping Ground, and then it has a basic forest. So Grady's going to let Bursavich... Was that upkeep or draw step? By the way, he's going to go ahead and hit the Blood Crypt. And now there's no red mana left in the deck for Bursavich, with Blood Crypt and Stomping Ground both gone. This is just... Red cards are no good. In fact, that Bloodstained Mire in play for Austin, don't count that as a land. There's nothing left in his deck he can get.
Yep, that's just nothing.
It can trigger Revolt.
Yep.
That's not really even necessary. You see a plus of Liliana, and with no other creature, Austin has to just pass. Another Ghost Quarter for Grady. That's just a Strip Mine. Now, I don't know if it does anything here. He's going to use it. Well, Overgrown Tomb.
Now he can Spell Pierce to traverse the Ilvenwald and 8 entire turn of Bursavich's.
Sure. Looks like Fatal Push, though, the pickup for Bursavich. That's pretty huge. Means Bursavich can start attacking again. Fatal Push is an answer for Mutavault. Unless, of course, Grady has a Dispel, something like that. Then Bursavich would lose. We'll see if he wants to take that risk.
Yeah.
For the record, that Tarmogoyf die at the top, not accurate right now. It is a, you see the checking, it is a 5/6 from Mishra's Bauble. We have the big 4, creature, land, instant, sorcery. The bonus one of Artifact is in the graveyard. So I'm interested, will Bursavich take the risk here?
Oh, he's
Street
got a
Wraith too.
Street
Street Wraith,
Wraith.
Thoughtseize, just all the hits. Liliana's going to go looking for maybe a Death Shadow, something. Mills Painful Truth. Hey, there's another Tarmogoyf. He'll put that in hand quickly.
Yes, that was excellent.
Swings with Tarmogoyf. Puts Grady down to 6. Yeah, that milled another one. So plays a Tarmogoyf. Now, Tidebinder Mage off the top, Ryan, I believe wins the game.
Yep, Tidebinder Mage, Mutavault, Spell Pierce. He has the mana to do all 3 of those things in one turn.
It's Master of the Pearl Trident. That was so close. There's no island, though, in play for Bursavich.
And both of these Tarmogoyfs are lethal.
So close. So you saw that blue 2-drop and thought maybe this Grady could have it here with the Mage, but I don't believe Master of the Pearl Trident does it. He's going to go cast the Master. Just says go. Now, if Bursavich end step tries to Fatal Push, then Austin would get a reprieve, but Bursavich, none of that. He's got Abrupt Decay and Fatal Push. Decay will take care of the Master. 2 attackers of 6 power, and it is Death's Shadow going on to the final. Austin Bursavich is your winner in 3.
And Grady made that close. To his credit, he played this matchup very well. That was going to be a Death Shadow versus Burn in our final.
Yeah, and that's one we said before. You know, you got to give credit. Death Shadow's doing really well. Austin has won both of his matches. At the same time, Trent Avra was a winner against Death Shadow last round. So something to like on both sides.